Okay, there is a lot of talk at the moment around the NRL, and it's been going on for a while, that they have to move a team out of Sydney and they have to relocate it somewhere else. There's also talk of possible expansion. These are the two options they've got. They can either move a team out of Sydney or they expand by 2 more teams just to keep it nice and even, so when it comes to player footy, it works. Now, the last time they expanded, they gave the Gold Coast Titans a nice little slot just south of Brisbane. And for the most part, the Gold Coast have been a competitive side. They've got to fast footy a few times, and sometimes they've been absolutely woeful. And there have been some ownership issues and other issues with the club on various levels, with players deciding to party before the season's even started, take loads of cocaine. Won't go into that. But it's been a reasonable success. They get a fair few fans in the stadium. And they have packed that C-Bus Super Stadium out a few times. It's just they leave that one stand empty most of the time, which I do not understand. It looks hideous, but they give a good. They've got some good players there. They've had some brilliant players there. The Jared Hayne experiment hasn't worked, but we'll move on from that. So that was the last time the NRL allowed a new team to enter. But here comes the question. The question that constantly gets posed is, they've got to move a team out of Sydney. Got to move a team out of Sydney. The expansion side of it goes quiet, even though that is an option. They could get a team in Perth and a team in Adelaide. Perth more likely, Adelaide not so much. They might have another team in Queensland. Cairns, for example, could have a team. Adelaide wasn't a success the last time Rugby League went there. We shall see. But the question is, move a team out of Sydney. Parramatta are rebuilding their stadium. They're not going to want to go. They've invested a lot of money in this. Cronulla got their stadium. Penrith have got a stadium. These teams ain't going to want to move. St George have a fan base on the edge of Sydney, but, you know, they're St George's Lara for a reason, because they used to be the Irrawalla Steelers, so they're not moving anywhere. Then you've got South Sydney and so the Rabbitohs, and then Sydney Roosters. At the moment, they're both basically sharing ANZ and Allianz, and the Canterbury Bulldogs. Except Canterbury have their own little stadium as well, but they rarely go there, and it needs redevelopment. So you've got those three. Now, the Rabbits, the Bulldogs, will take games on the road to New Zealand and Perth, and every time, all jerseys are worn, so there is options of moving a team to either New Zealand or Perth. And the Rabbitohs have had issues with the league before, where they've been locked out and all sorts. So. But then you have the West Tigers. Oh, how did I forget them? Now they're an amalgamation of the Balmain Tigers, who basically ran out of money, and the Western Suburbs, Magpies, who also ran out of money. And they've sort of bodged them together and made an NRL team, who've won the grand final. Admittedly, 13 years ago, but they won. They're the one that is mooted as most likely to be moved. They've had a lot of problems with money. They are one of the teams that fail to live up to expectations a lot of the time, and there's issues with the team now. They're very complex, and I'm not really up to tune with, but I know the issues are there. They're the ones that look most likely. Arguments can be made for South Sydney and Canterbury, but then they wouldn't make sense. But South Sydney, when they take games on the road, there's a big following in Perth and Darwin. There is fans there. Now the other option is expansion. Add 2 more teams. Locations are like Cairns and Perth. They're the likely locations for 2 new teams to go to. Queensland obviously is a rugby league. You've got North Queensland, Brisbane, Gold Coast, and they're all 3 of them really reasonably successful in regular season and playoffs. They're all reasonably decent sides, give or take, and they all always draw well. All 3 of them have good crowds. So to add a 4th team at Queensland makes it interesting. Cairns has a stadium. It's hosted Rugby World Cup games, Rugby League World Cup games this last World Cup. There's clearly passion and fan base there. It's a choice. Perth as well. Again, fans will turn up when Rugby League games are taken on tour there. Will turn up. So those are 2 big options. And Perth has recently lost its Super Rugby side, so there is a sports mad populace there, and they will turn up. So these are options. But I'm going to ask you, the fans, because I know you guys are down in Australia, New Zealand, and watch this channel a lot, and it's been on the discussion for a long time, and to make the NRL more a nationwide competition, because the AFL is at the moment pissing on them for some reason, and they've got teams everywhere apart from the Northern Territory in the AFL. They have got teams and Tasmania, so the AFL itself has things to consider, because in Tasmania it's insanity not to have a full-time team. Now I know they're trying to move one of the teams out there from Melbourne and keep it called Melbourne. You can't do that. So, but they're also going to expand or move teams, and the NRL is trying to compete with the AFL and is losing out because they're too East Coast centric, and they haven't realised you've got Western Australia. You've got one of the fastest growing cities in Perth, sat out there, and you're not touching it. So it's a question that's been regularly asked. So now I ask the question to you guys: what do you think should happen? Expand or move a team from Sydney? I think moving a team from Sydney is more likely to happen. They're less likely to want to expand the league. So, unless they get rid of the rep brand, that might, because they've already got rid of country city origin, which I felt was an insult. So they got rid of the rep part of the rep brand. Now, it's just a matter, will they move a team from Sydney, or will they choose to expand? I'm going to leave that. That's the question. Should the NRL move a team out of Sydney or expand? Thank you very much for watching. I know this has been a random video. I mean, I haven't really planned this. I've just been thinking about it for a while, and I've been looking at how the NHL have recently expanded to 31 teams, and look like they've got to expand to 32 very soon, and then there's rumours of which city's going to get it, and things like that, and are they going to relocate teams? So it's an interesting question for another league. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and place your comments below.